Hello there, my name is Bo and welcome to Bo Beats. This is the third episode in my home studio series for this summer, and in today's episode we are going to talk about and I'm going to show you how I have connected all of these synths behind me. There's plenty of synths and effects, and how I have connected all of them into one big setup and how I am recording them. So hopefully you'll find that entertaining. Let's check it out. And while it's fun to collect a lot of synths, I actually release some music too. So therefore, this video series is sponsored by distrokid.com. It is the service that I've used for many years to get my tracks onto Spotify and iTunes, and I recommend it. If you want to check it out, you can use my link in the description. Welcome to my slightly overkill synth studio, and no, you don't need these many synths to make music, obviously. However, it's quite a lot of fun, but also a lot of work setting it up, so let's go over how everything's routed. So let's start with the Patchbay, because I think that this is generally something that confuses a lot of people, and for somewhat good reason. So what's often a bit confusing is that Patchbays have inputs and outputs on the back and inputs and outputs on the front. Normally the sound flows down. So what does this mean? Well, it means that if I want to input audio from a synth like this into the Patchbay, I go and connect them down here. And then on the back, I have the inputs of, say, my mixer connected. And if I want to do the reverse, say I want to take audio from my mixer into something like the octatrack that I have here. Then I take outputs from my mixer, connect them into the back here, and then I just tap the audio from these top connectors here and put it into, say, the octatrack or an effects unit. So that's the basic principle. If this is difficult for you, I have a dedicated video on this, so I'll link it down below. You can go and watch it. It's an older video of mine. So on the Patchbay, I think I have 24 inputs being routed to my mixer. So all of these cables here are outputs from a synthesizer going into the mixer. And then I have outputs from the mixer. They are coming out here and going into, say, this little reverb here, the octatrack, or something like that. I even have master outputs here, left and right, so I can tap the signal into, say, a recorder or into a computer if I'm live streaming or something, so they are located over here. Now, a good question to ask at this point is, why do I want a Patchbay? Why don't I just connect everything directly to my mixer or to my audio interface? Well, there are a couple of good reasons why you want a Patchbay. And I've written them down here somewhere so I shouldn't forget. The first reason is that it makes your inputs and outputs easier to access. Instead of having to turn your mixer around every time and pull stuff and reconnect stuff, you have it available on a Patchbay, which is super handy. Second reason is that it's easier to connect things together, for example, creating effects chains or pulling audio from something into something else. Taking the audio from a synth, putting into a reverb unit, a distortion unit, and then into a sampler. All of this is easier to do if you have it hooked up to a Patchbay, but it does require quite a bit of planning and a lot of cables. And reason number 3 being that it actually decreases the wear and tear of your precious synths and samplers. Because you have them hooked up to the Patchbay, that means that it's the Patchbay that gets wear and tear, not the inputs and outputs of your mixer, your audio interface, or your synths. So if you know that you're the kind of person that just pulls everything out and rearranges a lot of things all the time, this could be a good reason to consider getting a Patchbay or 2 or maybe 3. I want the third one. So where are these outputs going? Where are they actually sending their audio? Well, they're sending in their audio to effects unit like this, the reverb. They're sending it to the Octatrack, which I in this setup actually use as an effects unit and a sampler. So I can use it as basically a reverb or a chorus or some combination of it using through machines. The outputs from the Patchbay are also patched up here. Currently I'm only using 4 channels, but I'm thinking of using actually 6 different channels. And why is this? Well, it actually makes it so that my Eurorack, which is sort of built like an effects rack, can be used as a send effect. So I can send audio from a synth through my mixer out to my Eurorack and then out again through my Befaco mixer system that has 6 dedicated outputs. So I can get, I think I have it set up for 1 stereo, 2 mono, and I'm not sure what I want to do with these 2 here, but I have 6 dedicated outputs going back into the mixer. So this is an interesting way of using Eurorack as more of an effects rig than an instrument or for creating synth sounds. So just to show you what I'm talking about here I'm controlling the Novation peak here, running through the Patchbay into the mixer, and we're monitoring through the mixer. And when I press play here, we can also hit the drum brute. It's connected to the Patchbay into the mixer. Let's say I want to send audio from the peak into this little reverb here, the Hall of Fame from TC Electronics. I've actually loaded a custom little tone print on it, which really opened it up for me. But let's say I want to send this. So it's very simple. I just locate the effect send on the mixer and pull up the channel for the peak. Okay, so there we go. And if I want to apply even more effects, I can send it to my Octatrack. Some spooky Octatrack effects going on there. I probably should get on with the video, but yeah, it was just so much fun jamming. So let's talk about what happens with audio once it's flowing into the Patchbay. Where does it end up? So on the back of my Patchbays, I have snakes connected, and these snakes are then connected here into the back here of the mixer. And as you can see, it doesn't take up too much space. It's very easy to just have a few cable ties to keep it all nice and tidy. And it also means that I can quite easily move my mixer around on this stand here. This is a stand I bought a couple of years back. I think it's a Quick Lock QL400. So with this setup, I can tuck away the mixer like this, but I can also bring it out if I want to have a better listening position while mixing on the mixer. Now let's talk about the back of my mixer. First, over here we have the Ethernet input. This goes to my stage box, and my stage box is located over here. Just one Ethernet connection, and I'm getting 16 additional inputs, 8 outputs. And as you can see, these are all hooked up here with snakes, the outputs going into the Patchbay. So we have a total of 16 inputs going in here from the Patchbay. And I'm currently using 6 outputs here into the Patchbay I currently don't have any monitors set up because, yeah, I'm in the middle of a build. And I have aux inputs here that I could use, but since they aren't recorded onto the SD card, I'm not using them. So I'm basically feeding back anything I send to the outputs into any of the inputs here. Next up, let's talk about the Presonus 32SC and how I use it for this setup. Now, this is a motorized mixer. It means that it's very easy to swap between different outputs, for example, or do changes to the main mix. Everything just snaps into place very quickly. And it being motorized is one of the things that makes it very suitable for a large synth setup. For example, you never have to worry about fader positions. You can save scenes. So if I press over here, you can see that we have a Bow Beats project and we have different scenes that we can save. Basically different settings for the channels, the fader positions, the naming, and so on. So just to show you what I mean by it being very simple, if I want to apply some reverb to, say, my peak, I simply use the flex mixes here, 7 and 8, and these correspond to outputs that I have hooked up on the Patchbay. And then I just choose the level I want to send to my reverb. So mix 7 and 8 here are actually sending to my little reverb over there. And if I play something, so I could be setting levels here for multiple channels very easily under mix 7 and 8, and just whenever I want to remove them, just pull them down. And this is why it's very handy for a large synth setup. Having motorized faders like this, and I just switch to another output. Maybe I'm sending here to my Eurorack, for example, or to the Octatrack, and I can just toggle through the different channels here. So let's send some stuff to the Octatrack, toggle back here, send some more. So this is just very, very handy. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So audio comes in here, and then I have the main mix. And these are all my 32 channels, and I use these pages to toggle between them. The channels are named, I haven't fully done it yet, and there are some level of also color coding to make it a little bit simpler and more easy to know what I'm doing. For example, if I'm sending something to the reverb, it's really nice to see peak, and I know that it's the peak that I'm sending to the reverb. So once everything is set up on the main mix and I have my audio output set up, the effect send set up as I want, I can record. And I record onto an SD card. So I press edit here. And here you can create a new session. You name it, press create. And here I select all tracks, but you can also select just individual tracks. And I hit record. And now it records, and I think it's the 32 individual channels plus the stereo output as sort of a redundancy or backup onto the SD card. And one thing I will say about recording on an SD card is that it's a little annoying that I only have the 32 channels and main, left and right, and I don't have the aux inputs, for example, and I don't have the effects returns from the internal effects, the reverbs and delays. And I really want you, Presonus, please add this. Add the option of recording the internal delays and effects, because for a synth setup that would be so amazing to be able to do all the mixing on this beautiful mixer and just record it to the SD card. Not having to deal with a computer in any way. That would be the dream. And this is also why I'm using the actual inputs to input the effect returns so I can record it to SD card. So that's how my audio is routed on this very big synth setup. Now before I leave you, I want to talk a little bit about distrokid.com. They're sponsoring the videos here. This whole series was made possible thanks to them. And they actually have a really cool feature called Teams. So Teams is basically a way to revenue share if you're multiple creatives working on the same project. So here we are in DistroKid. We can select our release here, press next. Now you can see here that we can add new team members using the email address and simply put in a percentage that we want to share with them. It's a super simple solution to revenue sharing. So if you want to check out DistroKid, use my link in the description. thank you for watching this third episode in my home studio series. If you haven't watched the previous episodes, you could go and do that. The first one is about 5 reasons not to build a big home studio, so that's a nice contrast to today's video. The second video is about me actually building my setup. That could be fun and inspirational. It's always nice seeing somebody else do a lot of work. If you want to stick around for the 4th episode, which will be about MIDI routings, how I've routed all the MIDI for my big synthesizer setup, then you should subscribe to the channel and enable that little bell. Hit the bell so you get a notification when I upload. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and I hope to see you in the next video. Talk to you later.